Hello, everyone, and welcome to Those Who Give a Damn podcast. I am your host, Dr. Duvalier Malone, and I have with me today Evan Milligan, and I am super excited to be here today. One of the most beautiful things about this podcast is we like to go and talk to people on the ground. And so today we know that a couple weeks ago, all roads led to the South. And so we understand that it's important to talk to boots on the ground, people who are on the ground, people who are doing the work. And so I brought this guest in today to really shed some light on the context of what it means on all roads lead to the South, the work that's already been doing, that's been happening down in the South, and to really provide us some historical context around what's happening down south. So, welcome to the podcast, and I'm so excited to have you here. I'd like to start the podcast off by allowing my guests to just introduce themselves. And we all have lenses in which we've experienced the world that really craft us to be the people that we are and the movements that we're in. So, walk my guests to who you are and why you decided to get into this movement.
Thank you, sir. So my name is Evan Milligan. I'm a father, son, husband, brother, friend from Montgomery, Alabama, raised in Houston, Texas. And I am a person that was pretty much born into movement work. My mother was raised in Montgomery, born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama. My father was born and raised in Houston, Texas, in Third Ward. And they both became very much engaged in the movements that were in their towns, within their black, back then it was segregation when they were born. And then as they became adults, my dad was really active in the Pan-Africanist cultural art scene in Houston. And then my mother was really close with some of the more radical Marxist organizing that James Foreman and folks with the Black Radical Workers Conference were doing in Atlanta. And so they ended up meeting in Houston, and basically our family, like the earliest memories that I have are of my dad in his dark room because he was a photographer, DJ, a bunch of other stuff, and then just people at the house, and it was just good vibes all the time. And I remember that as I got older, I realized, oh, these people I'm calling aunt and uncle, like I'm not blood related to them. They're not my parents, brothers and sisters, but they were so close because of their movement ties. These were people that had faced real violence together, folks they had dealt with a lot of real trauma. And so by the time I came along, they weren't in like the militant part of the movements, but they were still very much oriented towards, hey, Evan, black people, like that's your family. If they black, that's your family. African, don't matter. But then they were all, my mom was also like real big on humanity and just any type of human suffering. So I had to learn how to hold those two things. On one hand, okay, I'm related to all black people. I need to really be focused on black folks. On the other hand, anybody that looks like they need a friend or help or something to help them through the day, like be sensitive to that regardless of race. So I was like, I grew up in that type of household. A lot of art, a lot of organizing, a lot of volunteer work, a lot of people just in and out the house. And when I became, went to college, finished up, I had a chance to live in South Africa. I went to Birmingham Southern College. It's now closed, but that was in West Birmingham. And as a result of going to that school, there was a woman that was hired to do international studies and to work with any of the international students. And she just, she is such a sweet person, very genuine. And we just locked in. I was like, I always want to go to South Africa or somewhere. She's like, we're gonna figure it out. And so that enabled me I ended up spending over a year there. And I was meeting people from all over the continent of Africa. So I'm like a kid in a candy store at this point because they were
Right.
all coming to this college I was going to. People from Ethiopia, Kenya, Congo, Nigeria, like uh, um, even places that Madagascar. It was just Malawi, some, and they all were, for South Africa, for where they were coming from. That was like when people from rural Alabama go to Atlanta, sort of thing. That was a place that had more
Right.
jobs and more opportunity. But a lot of them were, I was studying in a graduate program for religion. A lot of these people were training to be ministers or religious scholars, and they had an intention to go back to their home countries. And they would like, that's a real consideration to go from a more stable environment to going back to places that were having fresh water crisis, active repression, like literally killing activists, civil wars. So when I saw that these people, like, they were peers of mine or older, they were willing to go to their homes. I was like, well, I'm from Alabama. I don't speak French. I don't speak Portuguese. I don't speak Chinese, Arabic. I speak Alabama though. So, and I was just seeing how much, at that time it was the early 2000s. So the Iraq war was popping, and the Southern former Confederate states was so supportive of the whole rationale for why the United States went to that war. So I thought, all right, if we're having, if the country I'm from is having this type of impact around the world, and the state I'm from and the region I'm from is having this type of impact on that country, then I need to be working in that state. That's where I'm from. I need to be, and so pretty much I've been down here, working in my hometown for over 20 years, and it's been a blessing. Like, I haven't been here straight through, but for the most part, I pretty much locked in here. Yeah.
That's commendable. That is commendable. And I understand that from being a son of the South, from Mississippi. My grandmother was born in 1917 and she lived to 2009. So do the math. She lived a long time, right?
Yeah.
And so she taught me about the civil rights movement. She taught me about, the Mississippi Confederate flag. She taught me about Emmett Till. She taught me about Medgar Evers and what happened to him. And so me being a part of this work and this movement, without a doubt, was a given, right?
Yeah.
But for so many people that are not from the South, don't have any connections to the South, why should they even give a damn about what's happening in the South right now? I want you to answer that question because
You
a lot of people, I understand I understand the nuances of it, but so many people was watching All Roads Lead to the South.
yeah,
I immediately got excited
yeah.
about, people taking that movement back. But on the grand scheme of things, people across this country, rent is high, they're unemployed. Why the hell should they give a damn about coming to the South? Answer that question to them today, like,
That's a
because a
real
lot of people
question.
don't understand it.
I mean, it like it's so there's language that's used for promotion and for telling the story and selling the show. And a lot of activism is as much show business as it is. It's just we don't have a stage, and our stage is the world. And we don't it's not rules in the same way. Like, if I'm a performer, there's ticket prices, there's union stuff. And if you're doing activism in the community, people can come up, shoot you in the face. They can say they're gonna do five things and then do none. Like, it's and so to get people's attention, sometimes you use phrases to promote something. That is not the same as like literal interpretation. So to say all roads lead to the south, well, if I live in Portland, Oregon, if I live in Brooklyn, if I live in Chicago, and I don't really go beyond 5 mile radius of where I'm at, all roads don't lead to the south for me, right? Now, all roads do lead to the crossroads wherever you at, because there's always a nexus point, and wherever we are, there's always an east side, a north side, a west side, and a south side. So yes, the south as a framing device is always important. Whether or not people have an association with this region is another conversation. For Black people in the United States, though, if you have a relationship to chattel slavery in the United States, then the Black Belt region of the U.S., from East Texas to the Atlantic Ocean, as high as the Virginias, down to the Gulf, when we say the South, that's what we're talking about. And that is the origin point for so much of Black American culture, in African American culture, and and certainly foundational structure of the United States economy. And if we want to take a step back, All Roads to the South is talking about that was a gathering for national, local, regional voting rights, civil rights groups, Black empowerment groups to get together, say, hey, we all support each other, and we understand that this is a full assault on civil rights, on voting rights, on the standing of Black communities in terms of representation. And so we need to have an event where we visually make the statement that we're not backing down, that we're not going to be consumed by infighting, that we're not cowering in fear. We'll come right to Montgomery in the place where the state that's quarterbacking, at least allegedly, quarterbacking this latest assault. And I think for that purpose, in terms on that end, it did provide that sort of emotional moment. On the other end, for those that look at that and like, okay, it's a festival, it's a rally. Like, are the ops even scared? Like, what is this? Why? That is also a real observation. That's also something to really talk about, because at this point, and what we've learned this week is that the Supreme Court of the United States is not going to prohibit these former Confederate states from doing very racist things, brazenly illegal things, unconstitutional things. They're not gonna step in. And so if and we know that most, like, the arms of this current federal government administration are not only not gonna step in, they would like to inflame that type of behavior. They want to see more of it.
Absolutely.
Keep them scattered.
Absolutely.
Keep them afraid. Keep them on the defense, so we can get this 1.8 billion, this 5 trillion, or whatever else to this friend, that friend, that friend, everybody but poor people. And so, you know, that's the situation that we're in, and we wanted to really be able to showcase that to as many Black people and allies that were willing to witness it.
Absolutely. And sometimes we talk about, a lot of times people talk about young people and, people that are disengaged, and sometimes they blame it on younger people.
Yeah.
But we know that young people have always been a part of the movement, and they are going to be the change that we want to see in the world. And then I want you to speak to people who feel like, my rent is high. I'm worried about, my job. I'm worried about how to survive day to day. Speak to them of why getting involved in whatever part of the community it is. I remember my grandmother used to say that when they were working in the civil rights movement, some marched, some prayed, some cooked
Mhm.
meals, some provided food, and they all had a role in the
Yeah.
movement, right? I will never forget, my grandmother talked about my Aunt Lucy. My Aunt Lucy marched on the front lines. My grandmother said I was younger, so I was a little afraid at first. So she said we would stay back and cook the meals and organize and get them prepared to go out on the streets to do the work that they needed to do during the civil rights movement. And when she got older, she got more involved in the movement because she built her confidence up. But she said everybody had a place. The churches would offer their congregation for those meetings and planning sessions. Talk to young people and people that are disengaged of why it's important to get involved and how that ecosystem is connected together. Because just like what you just said, a couple weeks after the gathering of All Roads Lead to Alabama, we see what's happening right now with the Supreme Court, right? So it's important to bring that visibility to these issues. Speak to that.
You know, I've always found it a little bit challenging as a speaker and just as my personality to convince people why they should love themselves, or love their mama, or love their town, or love that grandmom that when they get arrested, she the one that's going getting all the paperwork. And I think some of this is explaining how stages of life work. And I think for young people, when you're in the child stage of life, appropriately, you are focused on yourself and focused on learning the rules of wherever you live, you having fun, and people taking care of you. And it's a weird transition to go from that to, oh, the people that were taking care of me, they getting older now. They're dying. Like the clubs that used to come and give us stuff to do on certain holidays, they not doing it because dang, nobody joining them. And it's like when you realize that the whole fabric of the stuff that made up your childhood and your youth, whether it was your college experiences, your high school, like whatever it was that you enjoyed, all
Yeah, I can hear you.
people who are growing older and who need help. That's where I like to start with people. Because I can't really convince you to have I don't know what's going on in people's heads, and I don't know what trauma might be there to where the idea of joining a group or listening to a judge or voting in an election for an attorney general, stuff like that. Some people is so far from what they can even feel emotionally. Where I like to start with people is, who helped you? Nobody helped you in your life. Somebody helped you. What was there, a program? And not and like 10 times out of 10, if there was a program that helped a black person, if there was a because somebody contributed, they invested in it. And it wasn't just some large government or somebody outside of that person's community. It was often somebody right there beside them. And if you look at those people who actually helped you, what else did they do? And often they were very concerned with how governments use their power, use their resources to make life better or worse for folks that didn't have as much money or health or time. So when somebody looks at it like that and you say you can impact this whole situation with 10 minutes of your day, maybe 10 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how long you got to stand in line to vote. Like, what are your reasons not to do that? And then if voting is too much of a stretch, if you can impact somebody, you don't have to change your whole lifestyle. You can, if what you want to do is is only focus on pleasure and travel and money or whatever, can you even find $1 to give to one of these organizations, an hour of your time for a volunteer, or even one like or one follow to the organizations that like from people you trust, are actually about giving to other people. They not just chasing a camera. They not just chasing the moment. They really do care. They be in the tough places. If you know those places, like what is the reason why we won't support them? I like to start there with people. I like
Absolutely.
starting there.
That's a good point. And do you think we're moving into a place now? I know I talk to a lot of young people, and I like to spend time with young people because they are going to be the future of
Mm,
this country, and they are transactional. And so they say, well, why do I offer my vote? Why do I offer my time when it seemed like the rich is getting richer? And that's even in the black community as well as the white community. And they said, well, I don't see
yeah.
tangibleness in my life. What do you say to those young people? Should they hold their vote for a transaction, or should they vote just because it's going to work for the greater good of society? And I hear that a lot. And of course, my generation, we go out and vote in every single election because we were taught you need to vote in every single election. Your vote is not just for you. Your vote is for people who died, bled, and didn't have the right to vote. My grandmother instilled in me, you vote every single time there is an election, right? But these younger people are saying, I get that I understand that people died for the right to vote. But if I'm going to the poll every single year after year and I'm still unemployed, I still don't have the type of income, the job I need, my student loans are in default, I barely have food, I'm 1 feet away from being homeless, what transaction am I getting from this government? What do you say to those people?
I would say that you should maintain that same level of you should keep your eyes open, keep your third eye open, like be suspicious. Yeah. And there is a lot of transactions in government. You know where else is a lot of transactions? on all of these people's TikTok and Instagram. Like, let's not. We got to keep the same energy. So you can't be like, oh, they so transact, or what do I get out of it when you want everybody, like you want folks to follow you or to pull up to whatever you got going on. What they getting out of it? Then you have to think, okay, how do I promote this? How do I do the graphic? So we all are doing this all the time. The point is, how do we create a system that has more integrity so that there are things that are happening just because, not because you had to pay, not because you had to do anything, but because you exist, because you live there, you are entitled to certain services and rights. And that is should that should be how it works. But what we know for certain is it will never be like that if all the people who really believe it could be like that, that have that type of clout, that can get up and speak, that can make that food, that can do that dance, that can that like if your ministry is rolling a blunt, whatever it is that you do, that you can put that love in it to where it really it's about something bigger than you. If
Absolutely.
those people don't pull up, the system will never be more humane. And I think one of the
Absolutely.
things that's really like interesting is how many people have already given up before they even got in the fight. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We say, "Oh, we can't win that. It's rigged. It's da da da. So let's stay home." So now we fighting with 10, 5, 3, 2, 12% of our culture. What if we
Absolutely.
had actually like a real 45, 65, 70, any of these movies we like, when they get to that final battle scene, you see people pulling up and they're like, no, like we got you. Like it's like, no, we meant what we said when we took that oath. Like we meant what we said when we said we had your back. And sometimes we be waiting for people to show us that before we show them that, and that's not leadership. Like we trying to avoid getting hurt. And I don't wanna pull up and then nobody pulls up for me. Guess what? When you doing any type of work as an adult, people gonna fail you. They gonna disappoint you. And part of the process of doing movement work is learning how to take that and not allow it to shape our heart to where we start assuming that everybody else is out to get us and that we can't collaborate and work together. Like it's not gonna get better if we don't demand it and make it happen. But if we don't
Absolutely.
demand it and make it happen, it's not gonna get better. So I need you and you and you and you and you and you and you to pull up, especially in the DMV, especially in DC, where they had a legacy that is as old as our culture, a legacy of being a crossroads, of being a place where folks can come from all around black communities, all around the world, and put ideas together and efforts together that bear fruit around the country. And I think
Absolutely.
that's a really important legacy for folks in the DMV to like to be proud of, and to now, for those that have the space and the time to like invest in, to really, because nobody else is going to celebrate that legacy. Nobody else is going to appreciate it to the same extent that the descendants of that legacy have the opportunity to you know what I'm saying, to show.
Absolutely. And it's almost like, brother, you said a good word there. It's like planting those seeds. It's like what we grew up on, like planting that mustard seed or having that mustard seed of faith, planting one seed, and that seed growing into this beautiful array of vegetables and flowers, etc. And I
Yeah.
always tell people, we're going to see change. I keep saying I spend a lot of time with young people because they're the future of this country. And they want to see universal health care. They want to see term limits. They want to see artificial intelligence controlled and governance so that they can have a job in the future. At most commencement address, they've been booing, when speakers talk about AI and this innovation, they're booing it because they understand that with it not being controlled, right, that, there's going to be issues. They want to have affordable education. And you've traveled the world. globally, this is happening around the world, right? And it's been happening for a while, some of these issues that we talk about in this country. And when you educate young people and show them that this can happen, we're going to see the tides change over time. And I say all that to say,
You
while
right.
we're in this moment, while we're in this moment, we have to water the seeds of young people. And so, to your point, we have to water the seeds of investing in that work, that those that are eager and those that are curious, because I feel like they're going to be the bridge that take the next generation into a better society. Something else that you talked about early on that I want to lean in on is you said your mother and your parents taught you about humanity
Yeah,
and the blessed part of humanity. We are living in a moment now where artificial intelligence is disrupting society,
yeah,
but it's disrupting society in a way that we're going to see, innovation in ways that we haven't seen in all the different industries, whether it's media, whether it's medicine, whether it's banking, whether it's education. But the one thing that we can't take away is the humanity, right? As I'm having this conversation with you today, I feel your heart. I feel your passion for the work that you're doing. How do we tap back into humanity in our society? How do we tap back into that?
well, when I've had conversations with learning machines and AI models, one of the things that I found to be really interesting is the ones that we like, the language-based systems. So if it's ChatGPT, Claude, those kind of programs, most of them they can't hear. Like if you were to describe, they can read lyrics. If you give them sheet music, they can analyze it. They can, they can interpret rhythm as far as math, which is all like, that's still exceptionally valuable. That's a part of the experience of music, but they don't have the sensation of hearing. And they like, if you talk to them about that, it's the and some of them are more, it's like the self-awareness is different, but they don't have the experience of how to connect sensory analysis to emotion. They can describe that. They can describe what that might how that might play out, but experiencing it is something that they aren't able to do. And that also goes to belief, imagination, faith, religion, spirituality. And so when you talk about, what how do we get back to that humanity? I think in our organizing, in our lifestyles, one of the things that we've done as African American culture is really prioritize money. We have prioritized status, money, and material items in a way that is in conflict with the aspects of our culture that are really strengthened by immaterial experiences. So the thing that people feel when they're at the concert and then everyone starts, the artist puts the mic down and just lets the crowd do it, like the unison of that, it gives people goosebumps. When you at whatever your house of worship is, when you getting that tarot card reading, when you whatever it is you do, it's a part of that day where there's something that is unseen, and it's a
Hmm.
there that's one part of that's human. Like machines can't do that. Another thing that's very human is the crossroads when you have generations and very different understandings of kind of what happens after we die and prayer and magic and all. When folks that stand on different points of that conversation figure out how to come together, there is a it takes a humanity to even knit those moments together. And so if we're only focused on, how much Bitcoin we have, how many, all of these algorithmic things, money, followers, digital currency, all of that it's the same. Artificial intelligence is not a new phenomenon. Like this has been governing our economy. We haven't known what derivatives are since the late 90s, and they drive the economy up or down. The futures market, all that's been, it has been an artificial economy for this long. So for me, I'm less fearful of the technology. I'm fearful of our abandonment of our engagement. I'm fearful of what happens when we just believe that any new thing, it signals the end of the world and our death. Because if we adopt that point, then we can't envision ourselves 10,000 years from now. Like we can't really conceive of not ourselves, but those who come after us. We can't like have the idea that whatever is thrown at us, we will be able to come together and figure out ways to do more than just survive. And if there's technologies that are scary, we can figure out how to do something that makes them more useful than scary. But like if we don't have the conditioning of really understanding what is most beautiful and interesting about us, and it's not money, it's not the size of our houses, it's not luxury brand items, it's not being able to go to Dubai this week and wherever the next week. And we have been worshiping that as a culture throughout our religion, throughout our age groups, throughout our divine nine groups. Like this has been a thing that
Mhm.
and that's a conversation to have about integration and voting is to what extent have we become compromised by the same system we say is failing us?
Mm.
And,
That's
and
good.
whose fault is that? Like what
Mhm.
what is our agency in that process?
Mm.
We have no agency. So if we have no agency, then why do we expect anyone like so we just expecting folk to be nice to us? But that
Mhm.
doesn't make sense. So it's like we either we have agency. So how do we declare that there are aspects of ourselves, of our communities that are worth fighting for, preserving, honoring, celebrating, documenting, regardless of
Mhm.
if they can pay a market rate for that.
Mhm.
And then imagine how
Yes.
much how many of these things that we consider such detrimental problems would be that big of a challenge for us if we approached our schools like that, our libraries like that, our parks like
Mhm.
that, our senior centers, our neo the NICUs where
Mhm.
the babies are had or the nurse the midwife centers. Like if we approach those things, community gardens, if we really saw the
Mhm.
value that this is something that our ancestors gave us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it takes me back to that anchor, right? Understanding the source of what it is, and that isn't those materialistic things. And I've always thought about this too, after the election of Donald Trump, I started to think about, okay, how do I center myself? And I started a thing of returning to peace. And right now, like I have a urban garden here in my
Yeah,
home in DC and reading and meditating and really returning to peace of what I saw my parents and my grandparents do when times got rough, right? Finding peace not with materialistic things, but with the resources that God has already given us. And that's so profound. I've been talking about that with some colleagues about like food insecurity, for example. We talk about food insecurity and how big of an issue this is. But Evans, you're from the South. We have all this land. We have
mm,
all these historical black colleges who sit on all this land. And what if we started to return to growing our own food, right? I'm a part of a community garden here in DC that the University of the District of Columbia does. It's an urban garden.
right.
We have to start thinking about those resources that are already in front of us. We have land, right? All we gotta do is buy some seeds and we can grow our own food. We can do what we need to do. God has given us everything on this earth to be able to fulfill what it is that we need to fulfill. And I think we've got so codependent on things that are not of value to us that we are so far focused on those things, those materialistic things, versus the things that we already have.
Yeah.
of who you are and how you've centered us today in a place that we need to be, and that's centered within ourselves, right? I love what you said today about centering with self, because when you're centered with yourself, you're able to serve humanity in a different way and not placing judgment on anyone. This conversation also was very beautiful because even in my tough questions, you went back to the lenses in which other people experience the world and being able to respect their lived experiences. My last question to you today is, what gives you hope for the future?
When I step outside, and I think it's centering the self and myself, and I understand more of when I'm most centered when I'm centered in community. And I think I began to learn that, as you were saying, like in the South, you got multi-generational communities and households even. So for us, we were a caregiving household. My we moved from Houston back to Montgomery. My mother's mom and her mother's well, and her maternal grandparents, my big mama, big daddy, my great grandparents, and my grandma, we all lived together. We lived with them at one point, and then they came and lived with us. Alzheimer's, in-home dialysis, stroke, all the things. And when I was a kid, that impacted my ability to like do things in the street or to be a part of certain after school programs because my parents were working. And so I was kind of like an elder sitter. I needed to be at home to make sure if granny blood sugar got too low, I could give her the orange juice or the peppermint. Or if Big Mama forgot where her keys were because of the Alzheimer's or what the house number was, like stuff like that. And
Absolutely.
so that experience, like the people I grew up with in Montgomery, at least 40% of them could relate to that. It wasn't a majority, but it was a large subculture of caregiving in our communities. And then the ones that weren't caregiving, they probably lived in neighborhoods to where they had a candy lady on the block. They had the neighborhood mama or daddy that was like refereeing the basketball games. They had, even in the areas where there was dope being sold, you had a sense of like, oh, I know this person. I know that person. Like, you don't do this. And it's not just your family. And so I had experienced that before, but when I had a chance to live in South Africa, they taught me about something called Ubuntu, which is a philosophy that certainly the Zulu, and really any of the like the Xhosa people, that's what President Mandela was. It's this idea of people are people through other people. So my fullest self-actualization is achieved in the process of, working towards a liberation of everyone around me, the community that I prioritize. And what was interesting about that was that sounds very abstract, but it wasn't. Like politicians, they turned it into a slogan for sure. Corporations turned it into a slogan for sure.
Right.
So everybody did what they did on the transactional end. But I'm talking about it came from something deeper than that. It came from something that you didn't have to have any type of formal education to explain. So you could go out in the community, you would see people just dealing with each other like that. Like you couldn't
Mhm.
go into certain places and not say hello to people. Like you
Right.
had to, if the conversation was gonna take 20 minutes to get to whatever, like, all right, what you really here to ask me about? It was just gonna have to take 20 minutes to get there. Cause it was like it's more about the respect that you show. It's about the flavor, the style of the interaction. It ain't just about what I'ma get. So when I saw, oh, hold up, this what they call that here in South Africa. But in Congo they call that something different. Wait a minute. But Buddy from Thailand, and he got a name for it. It's like, oh, so this is just people. And then like when I came back to Alabama and I was building on that, I was like, we do this here. And so I think
Absolutely.
it's like finding that I hope I'm answering the question you asked, but it's finding how me doing the thing that only I can do, and me like my real individuality, is not in direct conflict with me participating in community. And we've been, from the 80s to now. Well, I would say Generation Z is a little bit more communal, honestly. But from the 80s through 2016, it's been a me, mine, like my clique, my side, my gang, my hood, my bank account. And we just like talking down the poor people.
Mm-hmm.
Broke, blah blah blah, can't tell me nothing. How many people have said that? Sit down, broke. Like that, we say that to ourselves. But so many of us are that. We are the very thing we say we despise. And so that means that we end up having a culture that's dishonest. It's
Mm-hmm.
where we are celebrating things that we know we aren't even doing. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's hard to build a movement on that. And so to get the respect of young people, it's simple. It's like showing up, golden ruling it out, Ubuntuing it out, coming back relentless every day. If we say we gonna do it, we showing up, we doing it, and then compensating people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Wow, wow. Thank you so much, brother. Evan, this is conversation I feel like is going to bless a lot of people. I can just see the heart of the humanity that you talked about, that your parents taught you show up in this interview today. Thank you for trusting me to be in community and to be in space with you. Uh, and I'm going to share your contact information, how people can get in contact with you and join your movement so that this conversation can move from conversation to something that is more tangible to be able to support you in the movement work that you're doing there in Alabama. Thank you again so much for joining me, and I really appreciate it.
thank you so much, Doc. Y'all please go to shakethefield.org if you want to support anything that's happening with the artists, the organizing in Alabama. It's SHAKETHEFIELD.org. The money doesn't go to me. I don't even work there. I love what they're doing. I support them. I was part of it as a staff member for a while, and they still are growing to bigger and better places. Please tap in with them. They got original music, merch, events, and it's very inspiring. Shake the field. Thank you, Dr. Malone. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely, and we're gonna pin that website in our comments so people can donate and support.
That's a bit. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank
All
you.
right. Peace.